Hello folks and welcome, Feren OS 2023.04. So KDE Plasma, it's actually a customized version of the Plasma desktop. It has a lot of Cinnamon influence, and I'll get into that. But anyways, I'm going to give you a tour and overview and tips for Feren OS. So I'll say welcome. I'm filming in 1920 by 1080. I was going to spare you the 4K. But your screen resolutions obviously may be different. But you can take a look at your YouTube player and maybe adjust accordingly if need be. Okay? But in either case, I'm going to close this window and talk a little bit about Feren. So, Feren OS. I'll resize stuff on the fly. So, a tip for web browsers is to hold down your control key if you have a standard computer mouse. Mine is a USB based with a scroll wheel. Maybe you have a Bluetooth one, and you can just scroll up and down while holding the control key to resize your innards. It may work with your touchpad if you hold the control key with two fingers, sliding them up and down. I'm not positive on this system, but it does with others. So in either case, let's move on. Feren OS, Debian and Ubuntu based out of the UK. Now, it says Cinnamon and KDE Plasma. So this comes up as a KDE Plasma, but it has a lot of Cinnamon influence. So if you're not familiar with that desktop, Linux Mint makes the Cinnamon desktop. So if you ever use the actual official Linux Mint Cinnamon desktop, which is also very nice, you'll see a lot of similarities in this video. Okay, where's the website for Feren? ferenos.weebly.com. So, get Feren OS. You probably want to check out the particulars, how much RAM, how much disk space, and all that good stuff. And then you can download the image, 2.7 gigabytes. You can test drive it without installing. And there's also lots of utilities on that. So let me talk about that. So if you decide to install Feren OS, you will be presented with, after reboot, a question or two. One of them is your username and password. The other is, where are you in the world? In other words, time zone. And then I would suggest that you drop down to your panel and go click this icon. Yours probably won't be green, but you can click it to update your system. Followed by clicking that little arrow, which is probably underneath my subscription key. And I do have over 200 videos on my YouTube site as a cheap plug for all kinds of things. Anyways, moving on. Click System Maintenance. You may want to add your language packs, maybe activate Time Shift. I'm going to start typing TI. Time Shift is a system restore utility. It's not meant to back up your personal stuff, but it's in general meant to back up your system files. It's always a good idea to have that running in the background. And it will just quietly make backups after you initially install that. And it takes about a couple seconds. Actually activate it, I should say, not install. Activate. And then you can find Time Shift on the installation media, the ones that you're using for your live system also. And that way it'll scan your drive for restore points. And you can click it and 10 minutes later you're back online. Okay? So anyways, for looking for applications, you just type, if I'm looking for calculator, C-A-L. And there it is right there. All right, so very nice feature. Just start typing, as one would say. All right, we have the time date thing. We can click that and get a calendar. You can have a drop-down arrow for notification thing. And that's a widget. It's the same thing, but it's a widget. Right-click, add widgets. Lots of little different widgets. All right, configure displays. Again, I'm running at 1920 by 1080. Wallpaper, different kind. You can add your own. I'll go over this fairly quickly. You can always pause, and all my videos have timelines or chapters. You can always go reverse or even pause. Add image, get new wallpaper, mouse actions, location, icons, filters, and about. All right, create new something, folders, text files, etc. And of course, add widgets. So I'm going to move along from here. So let me talk about the panel next. We have the little arrow key here where the subscription key is. You have the maintenance icon, which I suggest right after install, if you install this, to go check. There's other sorry, it's another toys in here. It's time for more coffee. All right, your wireless thing, your microphone thing, if you have one, Bluetooth, wireless thing. And that would be the other thing after installs. Click on and make sure that you're online before you try to do an update. Let's see, volume thing, and let's talk about the updater. So that normally is gray when you first start. So this update manager, if you've ever used Linux Mint Cinnamon, will look very, very similar to you. All right, you can do the refresh thing, and then you can install updates if there are any. Starting over at the file, you have close window, you have preferences, you want to change some of the timing. The system snapshot is time shift, and software sources I'll talk about when I open up Synaptic Package Manager a little bit later. Under view, different options here, including history and also Linux kernels. A little caution to the wind. If everything is working for you, there's probably very limited reasons why you want to change your kernel. But in case you do, please take a digital snapshot of this, smartphone, whatever. Just be aware of this. Okay, here's your kernels. A lot of these are obsolete, end of life. But the 5.4 series is still active. These are the older kernels. This is the newer ones. So, denoted by the bottom number to the top. Maybe confusing to some people. Like, why would a 5.15 be more advanced than a 5.8? Just trust me on that. This is the top. So I'm currently running the 5.15 series -82. All right, moving along. Okay, I think I'm pretty much done in here. Simple screen recorder icon. Simple screen recorder icon. I installed Simple Screen Recorder to bring you this video. I installed it using console or terminal. All right, let's talk about the store software. Store. This will also look very familiar to you if you've ever ran a Cinnamon desktop. Linux Mint Cinnamon. All right. That's the store. You have editor's pick, you have categories, you have searches, you have the little gear symbol. So again, about. And then you can do searches, like I'll do VLC for instance. And you have the standard versions installed denoted by the green check mark. If you want this larger, you can either maximize this window, right click, more actions, resize, or do it my way. Double click. Okay, one of the reasons I use this yellow pointer for education purposes is I have this other feature where it actually lines up that bar and it's pointing to it. So that means your mouse pointer has to be underneath that bar. So that's why I'm doing this way. If I try to double click over here, it does nothing. Okay. All right, just wanted to point that out. So what is Flatpack software? FlatHub. FlatHub.org. So there are two versions. That's what that one looks like. I'll make this larger. So as denoted by the goofy bird, you sometimes have screenshots on things. If you're very concerned about disk space, you may want to look at the size. Because in general, Flatpack software is larger than standard packages or software. Because it's self-contained. 3.3 gigabytes on the space is required on this. Just as an FYI. All right, so that's your software store. Very nice, easy to use. You want Blender? Click that, hit install. Looking for something? Do a search. GIMP is like Photoshop, by the way. Office application stuff. You can see LibreOffice writers installed. You can see a lot of things are installed. Kate's a nice text editor. For your older folks, maybe Emacs. Been around Linux for a while. You get the idea. Okay, Alt and F4. Now I'm going to go a little bit out of order since I'm talking about software. So I'm going to just type in SY for Synaptic Package Manager because this is another way you can install software. So let me put in my password. And the first thing I'm going to point to is this line down at the very left-hand corner. 85,184 packages are listed here. I'm sure you can find a thing or two. So 85,000 plus. This does not contain Flatpack software. So you got an additional 1,000 to 2,000. 2264 are installed. This is Synaptic. That's the Debian logo because Feren is a Debian-based system. All right, Legends, because you may be used to another Synaptic Package Manager, they're slightly different here. Where's the stuff coming from? The repos, repositories. There's the software. You can also decide if you're having connection issues to Archive Ubuntu, is to click that and find the mirrors. A mirror is another site that contains the same software. And it actually tells you the connection speeds. I'm not going to let this thing continue. But you get the idea. So you can install Synaptic, software in here. It's pretty simple to install anything. Mark it for installation, and if it requires other goodies, you mark that, and then you hit apply. A lot of people will probably find the stores a little bit nicer, but you can do either one. Some things have also screenshots. I'm just waiting for the system to respond. There we go. Okay, that's Synaptic in a nutshell. You can also use Terminal or Console to install software. Let me make this larger for you and type up my history buffer. Because I installed Simple Screen Recorder, that guy right there that I'm filming from Terminal. That's the command to install that. Now for you folks that are not familiar with Linux or Console or Terminal, be very careful what you type into these things. But that's the typical install command, Alt and F4. Okay, moving along. I'm going to jump over to the files. The file manager for this distribution, and keep in mind this is a Plasma desktop, but it doesn't use the standard Plasma file manager. It uses Nemo. So for you folks, again, that's used to a Cinnamon desktop, Nemo should become familiar to you. So I'm going to go to the Pictures folder just for a second and point out a couple more things to you and give you some tips. So we can maximize and unmaximize. We could right click, more actions, resize. I could also double click underneath what? This bar for resizing. Okay, it's the same thing as doing that. That's all. All right, so let's talk about the size of the thumbnails or icons. You have view, click, zoom in and out or normal, and Control 0, Control plus plus, or Control plus negative. Control negative, 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 you know, that kind of thing. So Control plus 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 plus, or Control minus 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 minus. Or you can do it my way. So again, I have a USB-based computer mouse that has a scroll wheel on it. So I'm going to use that to my benefit to resize icons. Holding down the Control key, I'm going to scroll forward, scroll backwards, and in between. The good thing about Nemo is I can make these dinky and go to my home folder and make these very large, and then switch between the two, and they'll retain the sizes. I'll resize those on the fly. These are still small. I'll make them more presentable in this fashion. And let's talk about maybe looking at information. So this is a perfectly good, I'll make this full screen. So this is a perfectly good example of a file name that's acceptable in Linux. 15.jpg.jpg. I know it looks goofy. So if I'm going to take a look at it, I double click, and it's frozen tundra. So picture my wife took. Right click, properties, image. It's taken with an iPhone 10 and all the particulars. All right, so just double click on these pictures. You can also cycle through these. This is Coco. Same deal, double click or resizing. Alt and F4. Okay, so you have shortcuts over here, file system over there, and devices. Devices are internal backup drives, external backup drives, or USB sticks. Your home folder also contains hidden files and folders. Control H is a very common command to show those things in any file manager for Linux. So I have my .icons folder sitting here. I normally create those when I do mouse pointers or cursors, this yellow thing. But since that folder was already created for me, I just copied my mouse cursor into here. Then I manually added this one through the system. In other words, I went through here to here to here, and I got new cursors and added this one, because that's what this is. But you notice that these are not in here, this Adwaita or DMZ White or any of those things, because they're installed here. You don't need to know this. I used to show this pretty heavily on my last YouTube channel. They're located right here. Adwaita and Breeze icons are in here. And DMZ White is probably somewhere, there they are, right here, black and white. These are protected by root permissions, by the way. So the ownership of this folder is owned by root. You will have to have root permissions to add or remove anything from that folder. So that's why these have a grayed out X button and this one does not. In other words, you can remove that. You can't remove that, but you can remove it here. I don't suggest that though. So that's where USR Share Icons folder. This is where all your users will get the same things. I'm adding this manually here, and I did it through here. Let's see, where am I at? Here it is. Sorry, lost myself for a second. So that's radioactive, this one, and this is afterglow, this one. So this one here, I can bring it up, was added through here. This one I added manually. I normally install these manually because I can do 6 or 7 at a time. And I can also undelete these things rather easily and throw them in my trash, and then change my mind, I'd pull them out of the trash can. Normally when you use these icons, they're permanently gone. Moving along. So your file manager, little tips and tricks. Control H. Resizing again, holding down the control key, scrolling up, scrolling back, scrolling up, scrolling back. You may want to try that if you have a touchpad. Hold down the control key, and I believe taking 2 fingers and sliding them up and down on your pad may produce this action. I know that touchpads are real sensitive though. That's why I prefer little USB mice or mouses. Mises? Mouses? Okay. A little humor there. Computer mouse. All right. Let's move along. So close that. Vivaldi is a web browser. And again, I showed this earlier. And I'm resizing the innards on a web page also using the same method I did in the file manager. Holding down the control key, scrolling up and down. You want some more tips? I'll give you that in a second. But that's the web browser. So let's walk over to here. We have a search feature. We have a little icon that says lock, a little icon that says log out, and a multifunction that starts a timer at 30 seconds for shutdown. You can also change your mind, click restart, sleep, log out, or cancel. Search feature, a couple of icons, and what's in your favorite. Vivaldi, file manager again is Nemo for this distribution. Cocoa, image, email client. Well, a lot of people are doing email online, so maybe not pertinent. LibreOffice, Keywrites text editor, a nice one. VLC. A tour I'd probably recommend if you install the system, or even if you're just doing it live. And don't forget to look through your system settings. There's a whole host of things you can do in here. I like the mac and cheese. Not so much, maybe. Anyways, you can get different styles and colors, and so forth and so on. All right, I'm going to skip over all and go to development. So we have Kate, the text editor, graphics, and let me just give you some examples of putting icons on your panel and your desktop. I'm going to use Krita as my example. Just click and drag it and drop it and add icon. And do the same on your panel. Just some tips for you. What's the other choice? Would be to right click add to desktop, add to panel or pin. All right, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on that. And then I'm going to single click on this one. So I'm going to right click and remove the icon. Close that. And then I'm going to right click in edit mode and then point to the icon and hit remove. I also have the panel height set a little bit higher than normal. Just wanted to point that out to you while I'm in here. The font sizes I have set for 11. It's normally a 10, FYI. I'm sorry, I started talking and I forgot to actually remove this thing. There we go. Now it's removed. Now I'm going to close that and close the post-it note. Continuing on, I left off with graphics. So you can see what's in the graphics section. Document scanner, Coco, the image thing, that digital painting program, LibreOffice Draw, and Ocular. Internet. You don't get the Google Chrome installed, but you get the Vivaldi and the rest of these toys. So if you want additional browsers, you click that and pick the one that is in this list. So if you want Firefox, install. Want the Brave, install. Opera and the rest of these. Okay, that was Internet. Multimedia, I install Simple Screen through Terminal. Office, it's got LibreOffice. I believe it's 7.1. I'll just open this up. Yeah, it's 7.1. So if you're brand new to the Linux world, LibreOffice can actually save this in Microsoft formats also. There is your Word, Office 365, and etc. if you are curious. All right, Science and Math, that's part of the LibreOffice suite. And LibreOffice, by the way, is also available for Macs and Microsoft Windows as an FYI. GNOME Disk Utility is also here. I guess you can install Gparted if you want, if you're more familiar with that, if you're doing that kind of stuff. Anyway, software sources, software store. Again, the store contains also Flatpack software. Synaptic Package Manager, another way to install software. And then don't forget about that system maintenance for your troubleshooting problems, and also to check the system if you're missing maybe some libraries of some sort, or anyways. System settings and update manager, same thing as this green icon down below. All right, system, driver manager, Debian package installer, another shortcut to console. You can, of course, just start typing and it'll start finding these. Don't forget to activate time shift if you install this. My recommendation is to make sure that's running. I would hate to have you install this thing and then something happens during some process and you have no way to log into your system without, unless you reinstall it, because I have used System Restore on a time shift on a different system, and it works rather well. Okay. All right. Don't forget to take the tour. You may see some interesting things there, and here's the welcome screen. So, and you can go through that rather easily. And I think where did I leave off? The welcome screen somewhere. Yes, okay, so utilities, got a couple of them. Don't forget, you have all kinds of software available for you to download. And so you got two different text editors. There's Kate and Kwrite. And then disk utility is GNOME Disk Utility, calculator, and don't forget the screenshot tool. So for you folks that like to make changes to things, I would highly encourage that you use the screenshot tool. You have full screen, rectangular region, active screen is my favorite. And anyways, take the screenshot and save it. I think, let's see, where am I at? Oh yeah, I was just going to give you some browser tips. So I'll use Vivaldi. So you have different search engines up here if you use Vivaldi too, by the way. So I am going to just use Google News for this example. It's just nice and convenient. And I'm going to talk about a couple things. All right, the news is bad enough, but more importantly, don't focus in on the articles. Focus in on what my shortcuts are going to be like. So resizing the innards of a web page, I don't care what you're looking at. Hold down your control key if you're using a standard computer mouse that has a scroll wheel on it. Mine is a USB based. Holding down the control key, scrolling up, make things bigger. It's very large. And then I'll scroll the other way to make it smaller. Probably to the point where you can't read it. And then I'll go somewhere in between. And then I'm going to let go of the control key. And now I can scroll in the resized. Another tip for you, if you have one of these mice or mouse, computer mouse that has a what I call the middle click. It's a little switch underneath your scroll wheel. You may not be aware that you have it, but give it a try nonetheless. If you can hear this, there's a switch under mine. And I have a fairly inexpensive USB-based computer mouse with a scroll wheel. But what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to open up articles without leaving this page, and they'll open up as tabs. Okay, so there's one loading right now. I'm going to keep scrolling. I haven't left this page yet. Opening up another article. And another article. That's probably sufficient. Now I can switch. After I get done here, I save these articles, or I just wanted to take a look at them. Now I'm going to show you another trick that instead of hitting the X in the corner to close these tabs, there's many other ways. But I'm just going to use my computer mouse and do nothing else except to middle click. And I'm going to point anywhere inside the approximation of this box. Okay, middle click, middle click, middle click. And if I middle click the last one, it closes the browser. Can you do this to other web browsers? You can. I'll use Google Chrome. All right, I got it. This is the first time I opened it. Double click to make it bigger. And Google News again, using the same analogy and example. Scrolling up, scrolling back, except this one gives me a percentage. 25%. This should go to 500. And I will leave it at something bigger than 100. I'm about 125. Same thing with the tabs. Middle click, middle click, middle click. They're loading right now. Middle click to close, middle click to close, middle click to close, and middle click to close. Thank you for watching, folks.